Previously on The Assassin Who Returned as the Duke's Son, there was a wave of disappearances caused by the twisted young elites. After their failure at the blood banquet, the protagonist fears for the lives of his loved ones, so he takes measures to hide them, moving them to a remote place on the outskirts of the city, visiting them from time to time. Suddenly, Lily, who had followed him, wants to know how he knows about these events before they happen. The instructor has realized how strangely extraordinary the protagonist is, and she's willing to fight for the truth. But before we begin, remember that everything you are about to see is a work of fiction. Do not replicate or attempt any violent or dangerous actions you hear in this story. With that said, let's get started. What really happened that night at the banquet? The fact that he knew Drenian was her fiancée. Those are things he couldn't possibly have known. The protagonist insists that either way, he needed to be purified. But she thinks that knowing all this means he could be a spy for another organization. He watches as she draws her dagger. So Kayla stays on high alert, watching her every move, protecting the protagonist from her attack, pushing her away from him. She reminds her of what she once said, "Don't lay a hand on my master." Although let's not forget, Lily actually gets a thrill from fighting her. So she gets ready, dodging every attack with a quick jump, and counterattacking midair, something the instructor was expecting, because Karam launches his adamant spell. But Lily doesn't care how strong the attack is, she can dodge it, and she does so effortlessly. Though in reality, if one of those attacks were to hit her, it could take her out in a single blow. Karam sees he missed and gets frustrated. All that destruction in his path, and he couldn't even leave a scratch. But she went back down so easily, and neither will Lily. However, the protagonist paralyzes her with his demonic sword control, leaving her on the ground, unable to move a muscle. He doesn't want any unnecessary chaos, because if things get out of hand, they'll all be caught. She knows he's right, so she stays silent, and he tells them to settle their issues right here. The tension lingers between them, but before letting the fight go on, he had to change his plans because he felt her presence. Brian informs him that she appeared out of nowhere. He's shocked that Anna managed to bypass the mist detection. She tells him it's just one of her many talents, reassuring him because she's the only one who knows about this place. She came to thank him, though the protagonist doesn't know why. Anna tells him she knows what she felt when he put it inside her. Everyone wants to know what she means. She's talking about that moment in battle. She explains that she can control all elements, combine them, or change them. She can even track people's mana. That was a gift from her grandfather. But the protagonist reminds her that her body was broken. Hearing this, she confirms that it was him and asks him to talk somewhere private. They leave while the protagonist overhears his friends whispering. Thalion tells them to pack their bags. They're heading to Lewin Academy. Emily is thrilled. Now she can take care of him every day. Meanwhile, Brian can only remember the disgusting meals she cooks. Anna tells him she spent most of her childhood in cold, dark places, enduring all sorts of experiments, because she's the granddaughter of Raijan's Rain Reaver. As they cross the bridge, she asks if he has a purpose too. He says he doesn't, and she asks why he saved them anonymously. He simply replies that he doesn't want to be famous. She reveals her mana and tells him that at first she thought it was darkness, but then she confesses she got it when she touched him at the restaurant. A power she didn't even know she had. That day she fainted, and the protagonist touched her. That's when she realized that the mana was his and that it wasn't from this world. Now he understands why she came to see him. She must want to take him to her grandfather, but she says no. She doesn't want to. He wonders if she's rebelling against her grandfather. She bows before him, making it clear that the answer is obvious. Then she hugs him and thanks him for easing her old pain. Her body was like a boiling pot, filled with all kinds of elements, but someone had sealed it with a lid, probably to prevent mana loss, but that only made things worse, and the overflowing mana was putting her life at risk. All the protagonist did was poke a hole in that pot, because he didn't want her to become someone else's puppet. He tells her there's nothing to thank him for, and asks her to keep his secret before walking away. She watches him with warmth in her eyes. He definitely thinks Anna is a good person. But back in her grandfather's office, he's furious upon learning that Anna is no longer under his control, and he wants her brought back as soon as possible. The next day, they're on their way to the academy by carriage. Emily looks genuinely happy, because she'll get to serve her young master again. She thought maids weren't allowed at the academy. But the protagonist reassures her he'll take care of that. Even though her first response was a firm no, the protagonist assures her that no one will notice. She tries to convince him by promising she won't skip any more classes, but it's useless. So she asks him if this is related to the blood banquet. She figures there must be a good reason for him to be asking for permission, but the protagonist refuses to say anything until he gets the dean's approval. So the dean gives it to him, knowing full well that the protagonist is going to do whatever he wants anyway. He only has one thing to say to Bartolome. He assures him that he had nothing to do with what happened at the blood banquet, since he figured that was what the dean wanted to ask. The dean wants to be certain of that, and the protagonist confirms it, because his word carries weight. As he leaves, he feels that the conversation went well, although he wonders how the dean would react if he found out the person behind it was his own grandson. He deduces that it couldn't have been Louis. He's not that meticulous. But he does think his brother Ashel planned it, and Boris executed it, since that's always how they do things. As he walks down the hallway, he spots the Prince of Sparnia, who's proudly bragging about his 1,300 push-ups. Thalion doesn't want that guy bothering him again, but as if he were waiting for him the moment he sees him, he gets up, challenging him to another fight. But the protagonist ignores him, because he has more important things on his mind. When he gets to his room, he finds Brian, lying on the floor looking like he's about to pass out, with what seems to be vomit. It's obvious from his face. He can't handle Emily's cooking. Thalion looks at him and wonders if he's still alive, asking Emily what happened. Meanwhile, she and the others are happily eating what they consider a delicacy. She explains that Brian fell asleep after eating the cookies she made for him, so Thalion immediately orders her not to cook anything for Brian ever again. He just wants to relax a little. But then he notices a letter on the table. When he opens it, he realizes it's from Anna. And as if he had summoned her, she appears. She tells him she ran away from home. Meanwhile, in the aqueducts of this place, two mysterious figures are conspiring. It's Ridgeon's right-hand man, saying that once their plan is executed, they'll finally stop him. And the woman, who is more than happy with what she's about to do. She doesn't care that Anna will be affected. Her name is Michelle, an instructor at the academy, revealing her dark intentions. Confident that by now, Anna must have already been captured. As she leaves, she wishes glory to the Garam kingdom. As the evening falls, they sit down for coffee and conversation, remembering how he dragged her out of her room. But the protagonist wants to know how she got past the barrier he set up in his dorm. She admits that she simply analyzed the barrier with mana and disabled it. He knows she's incredibly powerful. He asks if she read the letter. He tells her he was about to read it when she showed up. Anna says she was eager to hear his answer, which is why she came. But her expression changes when the protagonist asks if she was sent by her grandfather. He wants to know if Ridgeon's ordered her to get in contact with him. She admits that at first, yes, but not anymore. It's about trust now. He wants to know what she really wants. She confesses that sinister things have been happening within the association. And she tells him about the two dragons that disappeared suddenly, the people who had been smuggling, and she discovered that he was connected to all of them. Before, it was just a suspicion, but now she's sure. The protagonist wants to know what she plans to do now. She tells him she won't live much longer. Even though he helped her, she knows her body, after so many experiments, is completely broken. She estimates she has about 3 years left thanks to the protagonist, but her overly relaxed attitude makes Thalion doubt her. She says it's impossible for her to feel affected by it, which only makes her more of a nuisance to him. He gets up from the table. He wants nothing to do with her. She accepts it and then bids him farewell. Karen questions the way he just left her there, but he knows it's for the best. Anna is surrounded by some members of the association. She admits she thought she hid well, but clearly not. They tell her she has to come with them. Her grandfather is looking for her. When she looks at the man, she doesn't recognize him, since it was always Victor who picked her up. The man tells her that Victor is busy, stating that they're from the 6th Security Division. She smirks, realizing how bad they are at lying, because she doesn't know anyone named Victor. So she launches a blast of wind, and wonders if these guys are the extremists. But then, a shadowy figure grabs her head, casting a deep sleep spell on her. She collapses immediately. Satisfied with how quickly they captured her, they take her to the carriage. Anna, now unconscious. Karam calls for his master's attention. He wants him to handle them, but the protagonist isn't too thrilled about that idea. Later that night, they arrive at their destination. Announcing that they've brought Rijin's granddaughter, her instructor thanks them for their work, feeling pity for the girl who had been used all her life and discarded like trash. But she has another use for her. At that moment, a dark mist spreads from the carriage, catching the extremists' attention, but before they can say a word, they're executed with incredible speed and precision, leaving the remaining ones completely stunned. Though not for long, because the protagonist wasn't planning on leaving any loose ends. One of the subordinates notices they have company. He realizes someone followed them. Michelle orders him to show what happens when someone gets in her way. He accepts. He's going to destroy them. Karam thinks this will be easy, but the protagonist reminds him that the strongest ones are at the cathedral. The man steps forward, praising the protagonist's skills. For a 10-year-old kid, he's not bad. He analyzes him and realizes he's like Anna, but much more unstable than she is. As he launches a direct attack, the protagonist waits for him. Michelle, noticing how long he's taking, steps outside and is shocked by the sight in front of her. This wasn't what she expected to see. Her subordinate, defeated, the protagonist asks why she took Anna. She attacks him instantly. She reminds him of Anna. Since this woman can combine elements just like her spell is Thunder Flame, engulfing the protagonist in its power. But he draws his demonic dagger, and she can't believe what she's seeing, how he effortlessly deflects all her attacks with that dagger. In just seconds, the protagonist is already right in front of her, attacking her, though not very effectively. Michelle knows he's too dangerous to be left alive, so she attacks him with a charged shot. But before she can fire, Karam takes his human form and warns her to watch her back. Michelle suddenly feels a real sense of danger, causing her to miss her shot and completely destroy a cathedral. She realizes just how much mana she has, but by then, she's already trapped by Karam's sword. She states that no human can break free from those bindings. He asks her again about Anna's abduction. She laughs at the protagonist and tells him he'll figure it out soon enough, because he'll be looking for the answer in hell. They take a moment to analyze the dark heart inside her. It's an artifact designed to store mana in the heart. Karam deduces that Anna must have one too. That realization makes the protagonist understand all those experiments were meant to pave the way for evolution. Michelle asks how they know all this and who they really are. Dadian simply hands back her card and tells her she'll find out in hell. For a brief moment, fear flashes across her face. He grabs her by the head and with one swift motion, rips her heart out. He recalls reading about an artifact in his past life, a curved heart, describing how to use, control, and destroy it. Holding it in his hands, he considers that it might still be useful, so he orders Karam to bring Anna. When Karam does, he admits this will be the first time he attempts to destroy a heart. If Anna has the same kind, then this method should work. He embeds the broken heart into Anna, causing her to wake up unconsciously. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Gyar Mage Association, Anna regains consciousness, feeling her body lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Wondering why she can feel the protagonist's presence even stronger now. From a distance, Karam wants to know what the protagonist is planning. He simply replies that he'll use her later, though Karam doesn't get a good feeling about it, thinking he'll be betrayed. The protagonist chuckles at the thought of hearing that from her, and they leave the place. Rijins questions his granddaughter about why she remembers nothing. She simply states that she doesn't recall anything, but her grandfather doesn't believe a word of it. His right-hand man apologizes, saying he should have been the one to retrieve her. But Rijins blames only her. He steps closer, praising him for his hard work in protecting her. But then flames burst from his wrist. He confesses that he knew about his betrayal for a long time. The old man begs for mercy, but his pleas go unheard. Just hearing him speak disgusts Rijins, burning him alive. His granddaughter can only watch as her grandfather commits this act of cruelty, but then he confesses he was one of the people who ordered her abduction, and asks if she got any information on Thalion. A bit nervous, she insists there's nothing special about him. She knows lying to her grandfather is dangerous, so she tells him a lie wrapped in truth. But that's not the answer he wants to hear, so he asks again, what is the protagonist hiding? He's too sure that he's keeping something secret. She states that he only has a guardian knight and a useless maid. Rijin studies her words and reminds her that her only purpose is to obey. Ordering her to leave and forbidding her from going out for a while, she watches the man burning alive, thinking how tired and sick she is of that house. Meanwhile, back at the academy, the Prince of Sparnia is waiting outside the protagonist's room. That guy is He's beyond annoying. So he heads somewhere else. Noticing a group of students gathered, he wants to know what all the fuss is about. They inform him about the case of the missing instructor. Lily wants to know if he was the one who did it, but he tells her no. She's still suspicious. She says the instructor was a very talented mage, though rumors claim she was against regents. She confesses that they had been keeping an eye on her, and when the protagonist took care of Anna's abduction, he interrupted them. That makes him a little nervous. She knows what happened. Lily assures him that she's the only one who knows and assigns him a mission. The protagonist wonders what they'll do without an instructor. She tells him they'll take turns and try to find another one. Elsewhere, two men admire the view, a large chest in their cart. The old farmer asks why a city boy would come all the way out here. The young man says it's work for the academy, speeding up to make it on time. Meanwhile, in the room, Emily and Karam argue over a sleeping spot, where she refuses to give up her spot, and Karam is driving her crazy. Thalion enters the room, sees Emily crying out of fear of the sword. He tells her to get up. There's a new mission. Even though Emily wants to go, he can't take her along. Instead, he gives her a different task. To make sure Mia doesn't go hungry. She gets upset, thinking it's not an important job. But when she looks at Maya's room, she remembers the last transformation, and knows she has to feed her to prevent it from happening again. So she accepts, though not happily, which Thalion finds perfect. But he reminds her not to feed Brian since he's still recovering. Karam asks where they're headed next. The protagonist tells him to the city southwest of here, a place ruled by crime, money, and violence. These guys are caught up in an underground fight, where only one leaves alive. Two fighters stand in the ring. Let's call them Robin and the monster Ben. Robin taunts him to come at him, easily dodging the first attack, mocking his slow reflexes. But his overconfidence costs him. He gets caught by this monstrous beast. Robin is in deep trouble, as he's squeezed to death. His opponent revels in his victory. Every corner of this city reeks of misery. Filthy streets filled with hopeless people. On their way, they run into some local thugs, who try to intimidate them with their size and strength. They notice how massive these criminals are. The thugs warn them they're about to get into trouble, telling them to leave, but it's pointless. It all ends with a pile of beaten criminals. Arriving at a hotel, the protagonist pays for the best room. The receptionist asks about his age. The protagonist doesn't like her asking questions and repeats his request. A bit nervous, she proceeds, welcoming him to Lambaster Cage. He watches from his window. As people start arriving, unfriendly people, the protagonist heads down the stairs to the reception. He asks Lisa if she'd let him go down to the cage. She informs him that new customers aren't allowed in the cage. The protagonist immediately knows there's definitely a lot of illegal stuff happening down there. He questions her about how people keep disappearing, creating a tense moment. She simply explains that she's just doing her job. He smirks. Lisa is interesting. He decides to test how cautious she really is and moves his hand toward his pocket. She panics and attacks with multiple daggers. He jumps back, defending himself with a coin. When she realizes it's a gold coin, she feels embarrassed for reacting instinctively. She apologizes for her actions, clearing up the misunderstanding. The protagonist expresses how displeased he is, convincing her to let him into the cage. She shows him the way and hands him a VIP badge. She tells him it's because of the room he rented. It'll keep him safe, though she strongly advises him not to go down there. But of course, the protagonist prefers to go. Thalion thanks her for worrying about him as she leaves. Karam suggests that if they want to find the owner of the building, they should just ask Lisa directly. After all, the mission was to find the owner, not to enter illegal underground fights. Bethany is the person they need to track down. The protagonist replies that there are no clues about her, so he'll just have to go with the flow. He remembers how he visited this place in his past life during the war. Following the path, they finally arrive at the real Lambaster Cage. Meanwhile, this certain guy laughs when he hears what happened. The criminal we saw earlier, on his knees. He spills everything about what happened and where the protagonist is. He assumes that renting such a luxurious room means he must be from a noble family. The criminal doesn't know for sure. He just wants Mr. Gunther's help. Gunther gets up, interested in this kid. Back at the fight, the crowd is hyped over their bets, watching as their gladiators win and lose. From a distance, the protagonist observes and figures out how to locate Bethany. He's going to fight, leaving Karam slightly shocked by his decision. A group of men approaches Thalion, telling him this is no place for kids. Thalion lands a powerful punch right in the guy's gut. Then, grabs him by the hair, and watches as the protagonist punches him across the face, knocking out a tooth from sheer force. Then he turns to the other guy and tells him he wants to participate. The crowd scoffs at the sight of a child stepping into the ring. They think it's ridiculous, but the protagonist just gets ready for the fight. He's excited about his opponent because he'll be facing the monster, Ben. Everyone boos at the hosts. They know it's a waste of time. Ben, who's considered half ogre, is determined to crush him. But when he attacks, the protagonist leaps, effortlessly climbing up his arm and delivering a devastating punch to his face, hitting him right in the center. Ben collapses after a single strike, unconscious, face shattered. The entire arena is stunned. The same kid they mocked defeated the monster. The crowd roars, cheering for Simon de la Mea, the name the protagonist used to fight. Lisa warns him that hiding his name is pointless if they can see his face, but the protagonist reassures her he has a spell for that. She criticizes his father for passing down that power because it ensures that anyone who tries to remember him won't be able to. She walks away. Gunther watches the fight, memorizing the name Simon, and decides he wants him as an opponent. A few hours later, at the building, Lisa receives multiple requests for Simon. Among them is Delka, the Red District Manager. She wants the kid who caused the uproar to be brought to her, but Lisa flatly refuses. But Delka won't take no for an answer, threatening Lisa with her men. Lisa warns them that she won't tolerate this, especially not with her customers. Confirming to Delka that the boy is in the building, she realizes the protagonist actually pulled it off, but now she's unsure what to do. But just then, the protagonist arrives. Lisa wonders, how long has he been standing there? Simon, as he walks in, makes it clear he heard everything, and wants to know what the issue is with Delka. The moment she sees him, she's spellbound. Like it's love at first sight, she watches as he steps closer to settle any problems and immediately forgives him, then asks for his name. Hearing it, she praises how beautiful it is, just like his face. Lisa freezes. Watching this grown woman fall for a minor, the protagonist casually says he'll handle it, but Lisa warns him. Delka is dangerous. Delka pulls out a VIP invitation, one from her high-status clients. It's a way to contact her for a more intimate conversation later. The protagonist looks at it, a pleasure suite. He thinks this woman is insane. She walks off, telling him that for him, her services will always be free. This whole scene is bizarre, even for me. The protagonist shrugs, explaining they started it. Lisa tells him that his fight has become the talk of the city. It's a small place. News travels fast. She heads off to her room. She's glad the protagonist isn't interested in that crazy old lady. At the back of the room, Bethany watches, surprised that Delka left so quickly. Lisa, a bit nervous, greets her. Bethany asks about the boy and the friendship they seem to be forming. The receptionist says she's treating him like any other customer, but still gives her advice. He's just a kid after all. Gunther laughs at the idea of calling him a kid. Lisa gets offended when that man shows up. He arrives, suggesting that the owner should renovate her outdated establishment. Turns out Bethany was the one who called him. She wanted him to set up a fight for Gunther. She remembers he was banned long ago, but asks, who does he want to fight? Obviously, Simon. It'll be a spectacle, he says. Later, at the pleasure house, the staff can't believe Delka is struggling to make a choice. They joke. She's definitely fallen for the protagonist, laughing at the situation. One of them is certain that Thalion will end up there eventually, because Delka always gets what she wants. They're just glad they're not attractive enough to be in her sights. We see several pieces of paper coming together. She's sketching the face of the man she loves, frustrated that she can't remember it, even though she just saw him. But no matter how hard she tries, she can't recall his face. Thanks to the spell the protagonist used in the battle, she's losing her mind, to the point of crying over it. It's like her brain is covered in fog, but that only makes her desire him more, becoming obsessed with him. Alcohol, women, gambling. They're the lifeblood of the Red District, a place where people come for pleasure and lust. A place the protagonist will never set foot in. As he walks through the crowds, searching for Bethany, he doesn't watch where he's going and bumps into a girl, causing her boxes to fall. He asks if she's okay, but she, visibly frightened, apologizes. He doesn't understand why. As he helps her pick up the items, he notices they're cigarettes. He grows concerned and asks her again if she's hurt. She thanks him for his kindness. As he hands her the cigarette, she explains that she sells them and even offers to sell him one. The protagonist states that he doesn't smoke, but the name Grey Merchant Union is unfamiliar to him. So he asks her where she plans to sell them. She confesses that she'll be selling them in the eastern alleys all night until she runs out. He feels a bit sorry for her, pulling out a gold coin. He could buy all the boxes. The girl is confused. He just said he doesn't smoke. Thalion simply doesn't want her working. He even pulls out another coin for her personally. She lights up at his kindness and rushes away. Karam is annoyed at how kind the protagonist always is, but it was all a strategy. To follow her and eliminate those people, the red-haired girl is knocked to the ground. After a punch from that man, he takes the extra coin the protagonist gave her, getting ready to beat her senseless, taking out his rage over Simon on the girl. She pleads and swears she didn't steal from them. But the protagonist arrives, and in that moment, the coward trembles. Because he recognizes that voice, the protagonist looks down on them. The man thinks he can win if they all gang up on him, only to receive a kick to the face immediately. The girl watches as he teaches them a lesson. The criminal demands to know why he's doing this. Thalion coldly replies he hates people like him, and continues torturing him, twisting his leg, making him suffer for what he did. He tells the girl that the man won't be walking for a while, and returns her coin, advising her not to drop it next time. From the shadows, Gunther applauds. The protagonist looks at him, wondering if he recognized him. After all, his spell should prevent that. Gunther says, "There's only one person who can do that." He greets Simon, introducing himself. The protagonist wanted to question the injured man, but decides Gunther is a better source. Gunther presses his foot against the man's face, calling him worthless. The man's last words were that the protagonist was the bastard they talked about last time. Gunther crushes his skull. He didn't need him anymore. The girl is horrified at what she just saw. The protagonist scoffs. There was no need to kill him. But Gunther simply confesses he's excited for their upcoming fight. The protagonist is surprised to hear that Gunther knows the woman he's looking for, and Gunther attacks him without warning. But the protagonist dodges in time. Gunther grins. He likes that. He knows Simon is strong and wants to fight him right now. Throwing his first punch, the protagonist evades it. It slams into the ground, cracking the floor. Simon notices that and realizes Gunther has a skill that enhances his attacks. Gunther is thrilled. No need to wait for the event. They can fight right now, leaping up to match the protagonist's height, to satisfy his thirst for battle. Everflame falls beneath that attack. Meanwhile, somewhere within the arrow dimension, Lily meditates, hearing the god of darkness, who mentions the mission she gave the protagonist, since eliminating Bethany was not on the purification list. She won't scold him, but she is shocked by how he dragged Thalion into her personal affairs. She won't deny it, but Bethany is a woman that must be eliminated later. She only wanted to test Thalion, to see if he's worthy of trust as a successor or if he'll turn out like Bethany. It's a mystery that will soon unfold. As he lands after that attack, the protagonist looks angry, and now he's going all out. Gunther is ready. He wants him to hit him with everything he's got. Okay, guys, we're gonna stop here for today. We'll continue the story in the next video. This series will be made up of several small episodes, but if you want to keep reading, check the pinned comment below for more details. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and leave a comment. It really helps me keep bringing more content. That said, take care and see you next time.